video online, of course, on Facebook, and I imagined like the caramel was going to be pouring out and it would be really pretty and perfect and it would just flow out like you know, water over the side of a bank, and it would just be so gorgeous, and it would just, you know, I don't know, it would just make a really pretty presentation. What actually happened was completely opposite of that. My caramel turned out gritty. It didn't spread as well. So I'm hoping it tastes good. All right. Hey everybody, I'm Catenya McHenry and welcome to the Mom Who Can't Cook Show. I'm so happy to see you today. We are trying, of course, a brand new recipe, and I'm in the mood for baking. I love to bake. I love to make deep dish desserts, and there are two flavors that I absolutely love together, caramel and apple. So I saw this trending recipe on Facebook a few days ago. It's a caramel apple bread. So I thought, oh my God, that looks good. I think what attracted me most was the caramel glaze that sits on top of the bread. So I'm really excited to try that. There are a lot of ingredients. So I wanted to challenge myself a little bit and try something I've never tried before, and see how we do. So it's gonna be a loaf of bread. I'm sure it's something you can eat for dessert or maybe even for breakfast. Let's go through the list of ingredients. It calls for a cup of smooth, unsweetened applesauce. I didn't even know there was such a thing as unsweetened applesauce. So it calls for that. It also calls for half a cup of sugar, a half a cup of light brown sugar, 2 large eggs, a 1/4 cup of canola or vegetable oil, a teaspoon of vanilla, 2 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, a half a teaspoon of baking soda, a half a teaspoon of salt, a half a teaspoon of cinnamon, an 1/8 teaspoon of nutmeg. I'm gonna put a little bit more cinnamon and nutmeg in it because I love those flavors in there. And then of course, some peeled, cored, and finely diced apples. It calls for 1, but I'm making 2 loaves, so I did a little bit more. All right, so this recipe comes from the website Butter with a Side of Bread. I think she's a home cook, I'm not sure, but anyway, people were liking it and sharing it on Facebook, so I thought, why not try it? I may even take some pictures and post them and send it to the cook to see how well I did. All right, so there are 2 steps. We're gonna make the bread first, and then we'll make the glaze, the caramel glaze that goes on top afterwards. All right, so here we go. First step. 2, coat our pans, and I couldn't find the regular size 9-inch loaf pan, so I got 2 of the smaller pans, which is good enough for me and my children because we won't eat a whole loaf at once, and then I can slice it and, you know, serve it to them for breakfast or even a snack after school. All right, so we did that. Of course, I started my oven at 350. Now we're gonna combine the applesauce, the sugar. So a cup of the applesauce, and then we're gonna combine the sugar, the brown sugar, and then eggs. I'm sure if you can't find large eggs, I'm sure these will do. These are just cage-free eggs, and they're just gonna have to do. All right, so the eggs, and then our oil, and then the vanilla extract, and we combine all this together. All right, so that's the other thing. It's I don't have all the proper kitchen tools, so I just improvise and make do with what I have. I mean, you just make it work, right? All right, so we combine all this together. I love these flavors together. Brown sugar, oh my gosh, it smells so good. So we blend all of this together, and then the next step is to add in the flour, and then our baking powder, and then our baking soda, and the cinnamon and nutmeg. But like I told you, I'm gonna add more than what it calls for because I love these flavors. I always love an extra bit of cinnamon. I don't know about you, but if something calls for cinnamon, I always put more than what they ask for. And it usually turns out pretty well. I haven't had anybody complain. You know, children like to complain about everything, but they haven't complained about dessert. All right, cinnamon and sugar, and oh, and the salt. Can't forget the salt. All right, all that's in. We blend all that together and then stir just enough to combine. It says don't over mix it. Okay, I don't know what that means. Over mix? Can you do such a thing? I don't know. Maybe they should explain. I need addendums, I need asterisks. Over mix. This is what it looks like if it's over mixed. I don't know what that means. Okay, so we're gonna combine all these ingredients together, and then the last step is to toss in the apples, and then we'll pop it in the oven. We've combined our dry ingredients with a few of our wet ingredients. The last step before it goes in the oven is to fold in the apples. So I'm gonna peel and core an apple. And it didn't specify what kind of apples, but when I've made apple recipes before, I always use Granny Smith apples. I don't know how the others taste in this kind of recipe or dessert, so I just went with what I knew, which is Granny Smith. So hopefully that's what Butter with the Side of Bread wanted, because she wasn't very clear on that. So I also have this cool device. I used to sell Pampered Chef years ago, because I don't know. I already had a full-time job and was taking care of children, and I was just bored, I guess. How can that be? I don't know. Anyway, I sold Pampered Chef, and there's this cool gadget called an apple peeler core slicer, and it does all three of those at the same time. It's the coolest thing. No, I don't have it with me today because I'm packing and I'm moving, and I couldn't find it, and I didn't want to tear open another box to look for it. So we're going to go with this one today. This is just as good and gets the job done. It cores, it slices, and it shortens the time that it takes to actually peel an apple. I'm sure our grandmothers didn't have these gadgets, so they spent a lot more time in the kitchen. That's probably why I didn't really enjoy spending time in the kitchen, because everything seemed to take a long time, and it probably did back then. My grandmother would make things from scratch, and that meant taking half the day to make a cake. At Christmas and other holidays, she would start cooking like 2 or 3 days out, making pies, making cakes, and they were all so delicious. And I know she didn't skip on the butter. She put lots of butter, and it was just wholesome goodness. Oh, I don't think I can ever learn to cook like her, but I am, on an upcoming episode, I am gonna try one of her cake recipes. There's this cake that she used to make called an upside down 7-Up cake. Oh my God. Makes you want to slap your mama, as they say. Oh my goodness, it was so good. All right, so we're done chopping our apples. I hope I've chopped them small enough. And it called for 1 apple. I'm doing a little extra. This is more than an apple. I think my bread's gonna be kind of chunky. Well, we'll just go with it. See how big the chunks are? I think she said finely chopped, but there's no picture to show me what it's supposed to look like. Oh, she's got chunks in hers too. All right, well then I'm right on track. Okay, butter with the side of bread. Okay, that's the last step before throwing the bread in the oven. Well, not throwing it in, but you know what I mean. Kindly placing it in the oven. All right. So I'm just gonna fill these halfway. And I'm not really neat when I cook. Things kind of go everywhere. But thank God for sponges and soap, right? Yes. All right. Let's just use it all. Okay. It smells really good. Oh, I love cinnamon and nutmeg and sugar. I'm getting really excited. And my children are gonna be excited too. All right, one tip my mom always gave me from afar was to make sure you clean the edges of your pans so that they don't catch on fire. I'm gonna pop these 2 in the oven. So far, we have put 2 loaves of the bread in the oven. They're cooking right now and it smells so good. So while those are in the oven, I'm gonna make the glaze. It's just 3 ingredients, which I'm really excited about. You know, the other reason I'm excited about this recipe is I love caramel, but I have a dear friend who makes these amazing caramel cakes. She doesn't do it very often, and when she does, she brings them over and they're still warm, and I just feel like I've died and gone to heaven because they're so amazing and moist and soft. And when she brings them over warm, like I'm thinking about it right now, I'm getting really excited. She brings them over warm and then we scoop out vanilla ice cream to go with them, and oh my God, it is the best treat on earth. And then I feel guilty afterwards. So I'm like, I'm trying to stay in shape, but it's so good. And then I can't help myself. I eat more than 1 piece. You can't help it, it's so good. So I'm excited. I don't know if mine will taste like hers, but I'm gonna get as close as I possibly can. So the 3 ingredients for the caramel glaze are a 1/2 cup of butter, a 1/2 cup of brown sugar, and 1 tablespoon of milk. Now, we ran out of milk. This is probably something that occurs in your house pretty frequently. The things we run out of all the time are toilet paper and milk and paper towels. With 3 children in the house, those are the things we go through very fast and often. So I'm gonna try something. I don't know if this is gonna work, but instead of the milk, I'm gonna substitute the milk with applesauce. I don't know if that's gonna work. We'll see how it tastes. But you know, it's all about improvisation and just figuring it out as you go. I don't know. There's probably a better way, but that's what we're gonna do today. Okay, so I'm supposed to melt the butter and then combine the brown sugar and what would be milk. We're using applesauce. So then the instructions are to just keep an eye on it and melt the butter in a saucepan on medium heat, add in brown sugar and milk and whisk constantly, bring to a boil, and then boil for 2 minutes, continuing to whisk. Don't have a whisk, but I'm sure this tool is just fine. So we just keep this going for 2 minutes with the butter. Oh my gosh, it's smelling good already. This is fantastic. If I haven't told you how excited I am, can you see my face? See the excitement on my face about this caramel recipe? You know, the other thing too, I wonder what other things we can use the caramel glaze for. I love caramel apples, caramel candy. I bet caramel with just, caramel and chocolate. Oh my gosh. We have some chocolate chip cookies. I think I'm gonna try the caramel glaze on the chocolate chip cookie. That might send my energy over the top, but it sounds really good, doesn't it? All right, so we whisk this for 2 minutes and then we're supposed to bring it to a boil. And after we bring it to a boil, do that for 2 minutes, continuing to whisk, and then move from the heat and let it cool for 30 minutes to an hour until the caramel has thickened, and stir every 10 minutes or so. You need to continue the stirring while cooling so that the sugar fully dissolves. Okay, that sounds like a science experiment. And in a way, cooking is a science experiment, especially in my house. Sometimes the science goes awry. No, not sometimes, many times the science goes awry. Oh, and I usually miss a step, like today, no milk. All right, well, we'll just figure out what we can use that we already have in the pantry. And that's, I guess, what cooking is all about, just figuring it out as you go. And then when it turns bad, you figure out what not to do for the next time. With me, it's all the time. All right, so we'll bring this to a boil and then 2 minutes, continue to rest. Okay, then we'll move it from the heat and then we'll let it cool. We've removed the caramel glaze from the heat, and the instruction is to stir it every 10 minutes. And over the time that it's cooling, it's supposed to thicken up at the same time. So I just wanted to try it to see what it tastes like. That's really good. I don't know if this is what it's supposed to taste like, but It tastes really good. Can't stop myself. See, that's my weakness. Sweets. I can't help myself. All right, so we're gonna keep stirring this. The bread's gonna be ready soon, and then we'll combine everything. We're about to take the bread out of the oven. It's ready. It's ready in less time than what the recipe calls for. The recipe called for about an hour. It's been in there for about 35 minutes, and it's ready to go. I just checked it with a toothpick, and both loaves are ready. So we're gonna take these out, and they look really good. Look at that. And it's not burned. Yay, that's a huge accomplishment. All right, those are ready to go. Now, I got to washing dishes and forgot about my caramel. And so the recipe said to stir it every 10 minutes. And I didn't stir it every 10 minutes, so it got a little, I think the ingredients started separating and it got a little chunky. So I thought, well, maybe I can loosen it up again by just turning on the heat and putting the heat on it. That's not really working. So we're just gonna hope for the best at this point. It looks like it's getting back to where it was. The texture is getting back to where it was before. It's looking a little creamier. Before it was like a gel, and I don't think that's what it's supposed to look like or taste like. Okay, so we're gonna let our bread cool, and then we'll pop it out of the pans and then pour the glaze on it and slice it, and again, hope for the best. So cross your fingers, everybody. Cooking with Catenya is like a comedy of errors. It should be the comedy of cooking with Catenya. Because this is a comedy. So I just popped one loaf out of the pan onto the plate, and it kind of fell apart in the process. So good thing I made two. We'll see how this one goes. Cross your fingers, everybody. Of course, that one's perfect. Look how pretty that came out. And the chunks of apples. Oh, that's much prettier than the other one. The other one was terrible. But my caramel is not, it's not as, the texture is not right, because I was supposed to let it sit. It's a little, it's gritty, that's the word. It's gritty, and I don't think I did this part right. I hear myself saying that so often in the kitchen. I mean, this one looks better. The loaf came out better. But the caramel is a little gritty. I got to figure out how to get the caramel right. I need to call my friend, Chris, and ask her what she does. And the color of her caramel, like when she makes a caramel cake, the texture is lighter. It's not as dark. It's like a tan color. So it's just not right. So I did something wrong here. And you know what? Actually, the cook, or the blogger, she put on the recipe that apparently people are having a lot of trouble with the caramel, so she had a bunch of tips on there. So you can go to her website from ours and read the tips. Okay. Isn't that pretty? When I saw this is what I imagined. Okay, I saw the video online, of course, on Facebook, and I imagined like the caramel was going to be pouring out, and it would be really pretty and perfect, and it would just flow out like you know, water over the side of a bank, and it would just be so gorgeous, and it would just, you know, I don't know, it would just make a really pretty presentation. What actually happened was completely opposite of that. My caramel turned out gritty. It didn't spread as well. So I'm hoping it tastes good. All right, we're gonna let this sit. I'm gonna pull the other one out of the refrigerator or the freezer, the one that I kind of helped along a little bit, and we'll cut both and see how it turns out. I don't have high hopes. but whatever, I'm trying. So here's version number 1. It doesn't look like the picture at all. My bread fell apart as it came out of the loaf, and so I tried to squish it back together, almost like, you know, Play-Doh. I tried to mold it back together and then put the caramel on top. The caramel isn't the right color. It's not the color that my friend's caramel cake is. And so then I made another loaf, and this one came out of the loaf pan perfectly. But again, my caramel it's not right. It's really gritty, but it looks pretty. It makes a good presentation. It's just not it doesn't look like the picture. So I'm just gonna slice it, and we're gonna try it and see what it tastes like. And I'm gonna take a slice from both and see which one I like better. The caramel tastes good by itself. Okay, this is the second loaf. This one is good. Yeah, it's not bad. The apples are tender, not too chunky. Yeah, it's gritty. I mean, it's good because the flavors are good. It tastes just like sugar. It tastes like flavored sugar. I mean, the bread's good. I don't know. It looks pretty, but it didn't turn out the way the picture. It didn't turn out like the picture. So butter with a side of bread, I need a little help. Our good friend Bob is trying the caramel apple cake. All right, Bob, give me your honest opinion.
Well, it is only my second piece.
Only.
This falls in my mouth just so gracefully. The apples, her using Granny Smith is an excellent choice. It gives it a little tartness. And then the caramel topping just adds great sweetness to it also. The cake is very moist. I know she was complaining about it being crumbly, but it's not as pretty as her picture.
No,
here.
it doesn't look like the picture at all.
But the cake in the picture is probably the wrong cake, whereas this is the right cake.
Bob, you're my new best friend.
Well, thank you.
Flattery makes all the difference, doesn't it? And it is a second piece. So thank you for having more than one piece. That makes me feel good. I feel redeemed now because, you know, you heard my opinion and my how I felt about the end result, and I didn't like it, and I didn't think that it turned out like it was supposed to, but thank God Bob walked by.
Well, thanks a lot.
Oh,
again
thank
for,
you, Bob.
Invite me. I
Yes,
appreciate it.
thank you. Eat all you want.
All right.
Thanks for joining us today, you guys. We'll see you next time as I continue to learn how to cook on the Mom Who Can't Cook show. Well, what happened today is what usually happens when I cook, no matter what I'm cooking, whether it's baking or trying to put dinner together, is it didn't turn out like the picture. I mean, the shape of the loaf, all right, is okay. I'm proud of myself for that. But this is the more perfect loaf. You've seen the other loaf, and we've cut a few pieces, but it was sliding in the front and it fell apart in transfer from the loaf pan to the plate. And maybe that was because I didn't put enough spray, or I didn't spray it enough on the inside of the pan. I don't know, I have to figure that out. The other thing that happened is the color of the caramel. So there were just 3 ingredients: butter, brown sugar, and milk. I didn't have milk, so I substituted with applesauce. So maybe that was the problem there, I don't know. I also think maybe the tool that I use is not the right tool. It called for a whisk. I didn't have a whisk, so I substituted and used a wooden stir. So maybe that's what happened too, but the caramel didn't turn out like I had hoped. It's a little gritty, the color is off, and I wouldn't count it as a full disaster, maybe a half disaster. I don't know, but we'll see. I have someone taste testing for me, so we'll see what he has to say. I tried.